Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living. Welcome to today's episode of Wisdom Talk Radio. This is where we explore the depths of conscious living and what it truly means to live an expanded life. So join us to be inspired, encouraged, transformed, and to experience a deep sense of both joy and possibility. And for me, those really go together. One focus that I rarely get to explore here at Wisdom Talk Radio is about conscious parenting. And yet it's something that's really close to my heart and has been for really forever. And it's foundational to literally, I think, everything about our society, everything about life. So I'm excited to get to do this today. And in both my work and in my upcoming book, I'm bringing to the foreground our original connection with presence, with source, with God, however you wish to speak about that. It's in my heart, it's our original blessing. And that's very different from original sin and all that, that has been spoken about that and what that stirs up in us personally. So what if we carried that awareness into how we are with the children? Our children are the leaders of tomorrow. So stay tuned for what I think will be an enlightening doorway into how we can bring more consciousness really into our being as parents and as adults. Because even if you are not a parent, you impact children. You live on this planet, so you do. I'm Laurie Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute, home of the Quantum Connection Process. You can go over to the Baca Institute to discover your unique connection with your quantum connection style. That's really the essence of who you are in relationship to the quantum universe. And I speak about that. I mean, I can say, why quantum connection? What's that about? It's that we're each designed to directly connect with source in our own unique way. And knowing your style really does open up a deeper possibility of connection with the universe. And it's the secret to creating what you want in your life, in every aspect of your life. Because who you are is exactly who is needed. Aedo is a children's book author, practical philosophy teacher, and an international entrepreneur. His book, Conscious Bible Stories, approaches children's biblical teachings from a gentler, more conscious perspective, turning away from narratives that stir up victimhood, anxiety, and self-blame at an early age. Because any of you that have been raised with a religious education, a religious background, and you really start to look at it, you will recognize those elements. Jay believes retelling these stories will show the next generation that God wants them to feel empowered and confident in themselves without the weight of fear and blame. Welcome, Jay, and I'm so excited to have you here. I've got so many questions. I can't wait to go and dive into it with you.
Thanks for having me, Laurie. I'm very excited.
Great. So maybe we can kind of lay some groundwork here with what you feel like has been the unintentional effect of Bible teachings. And why you? Why is this so important to you?
That's a great question. It's important to me because these stories have been a part of my life since as far as I can remember.
Mhm.
And even though they were instilled in me at a young age, I remember these stories. I remember them very clearly. And I remember not particularly liking these stories,
Oh.
not particularly caring for the characters. For instance, in the book that I shared with you, the Cain and Abel story,
Mhm.
I remember not resonating with either one of those characters because the noble one dies. Who
Mhm.
wants to be the one that dies? And then the one that carries on the story is the one that's resentful and filled with guilt and anger
Mhm.
and who is shunned away, who essentially runs away. And, it's very nonchalantly uh, leads us to believe that we are the descendants of the one who survived.
Mhm.
And
And
and then
flawed,
and flawed, big time flawed.
big time
And
flawed.
so he's essentially we're the descendants of this man who killed his brother.
Mm.
And there are so many more stories to share. I don't know anybody who's killed their brother. I'm sure there are people who have played out that story.
Mhm.
So it just didn't resonate with me on many levels.
Mhm.
And I wrote this story in the way that I shared with you because in this story I want to be both of the characters. I'm okay with both of them
Ah.
because they're willing to learn and grow from their mistakes and willing to admit and apologize and grow from that and become better because of it. And so I feel like I'm more like setting myself up for triumph rather than setting myself up for loss. And not to, I just want to be clear, I in no way do I intend to deny these stories. I believe these are a very important part of our history, and this is a very important part of where we come from. And I say we because a large majority of planet Earth have been instilled with these stories and
Mhm.
have been put in a position where this is where they come from. And so we we're put into these stories, of where we come from, what our religious beliefs are, what our government wants from us.
Mhm.
And so it's a heavy burden, I feel.
Mhm. Mhm.
And this is my attempt to lighten things up slightly.
Well, but I feel like there's something under that where you carry into this work uh, almost a feeling of maybe these stories have a different message, or what is the foundational impact that we're still dealing with and that we have to shift in some kind of way, that we have to come to a deeper recognition, perhaps.
Sure. Yeah, one of the recognitions I had with these stories is realizing that perhaps these stories weren't as literate word for word as we have come to believe. And so maybe they were perhaps a reflection of what we are. And perhaps it's reflecting back to us the worst part about us, meaning like what we're capable of, in a
Mm-hmm,
sense.
mm-hmm,
We're
mm-hmm.
definitely capable of
Right.
this action
Mm-hmm,
because we've all felt that anger and we've had these thoughts.
mm-hmm,
Sometimes we want to veer our car off the road and run people over just where we're feeling so angry, right? But we don't do it.
mm-hmm,
And so I think that these stories are meant to show us the worst part about us and only so that we can reflect on the best part about us.
mm-hmm.
It's an encounter with ourselves.
Yeah.
And we see in a mirror, it looks like exactly us, but it's
Mm-hmm.
actually the opposite of us. And I think that's what these stories
It's
are.
that distorted reflection.
Right.
And that's such an interesting thing to consider because it's also, if we think of it from a historical perspective, those stories were written a long time ago, maybe not long in a cosmic sense, but long enough from our human perspective. And maybe that was the energy and the level of consciousness that was in existence, and now there's a potential for something different. Does that resonate with you at all?
I believe that, yes.
Okay. So that burden that you spoke about, why were you so moved to be, besides that personal, I don't connect with this? Lots of people don't connect with those stories, but somehow you've taken that on the task, the mission, if you will, to to recreate these, to bring something different to our youth.
Yeah, honestly, when I was inspired to write these stories, uh, I can't pinpoint an exact moment, but it was I was encountering a lot with my friends' kids that were growing up, more like 5, 6 years old, and they were able to actually have conversations. And I was just fascinated by how alive they were and how easy they were to communicate with. And I sort of forgot that. I forgot what it was like to be like that in that innocence
Mm-hmm.
at a young age. And I actually had, despite the religious household that I grew up in, I actually had a really great childhood, very loving parents, and it was just I had forgotten what it was like, and just by encountering, my nephews and my niece and my friends' kids,
Mm-hmm.
I almost like remembered. I
Uh-huh.
remember thoughts that I had when I was a kid, and I remember this particular thought, and this thought was, "Don't forget, don't forget what this is like," because like it was almost and I had remembered this before. It was
Mm-hmm.
like a slippery thought that I've been like
Yeah.
bringing it with me.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember, it was very a particular instance talking to my friend's 5-year-old where he was upset that another girl was angry with him or mean to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared with him something. And I shared with him just the idea that if somebody is mean to you, it's because they're not feeling so great.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's up to you to make them feel better, even though it doesn't feel like it's yours.
Hmm.
And then I saw his reflection. I saw his eyes light up, and his frown turned into a smile, and I couldn't believe that I did that. And it was just a moment, but these moments, they stick with you.
Yeah.
And and then I just at some point I felt inspired to write these stories, and I wrote many of these stories in a matter of weeks,
Mm-hmm.
and because I couldn't stop thinking about them, I couldn't stop it,
Mm-hmm.
and then I shared them with my friends, and I was almost hesitant to do so because I can almost feel the weight of what I was attempting to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Nevertheless, it was well received. And the persons that I felt most afraid to share them with, my parents, also received them well.
Wow.
And I was fascinated by the idea and the fact that the relationship with my parents expanded from that moment.
Mm.
I was able to share things with them and point things out to them. And I was able to see the innocence in them also, like if they were kids.
Yeah.
And so it just, in my life, it has completely shifted my world. And that's what I believe we all have the power to do. I believe what we learn from science is that we have this gravitational pull, and we're literally creating our belief system with our actions. And everyone in our world is gravitated to us in one way or another. And if we don't like the way that our world is, it's up to us to change it. And if we do like the way that our world is, it's up to us to keep it going because nobody else is going to do that for us.
Mm. Nobody else is going to do that for us. And it's both a responsibility and a blessing because we are the creators. So we get to do that.
That's right.
Get to write these stories. You get to reframe the messages. You get to really impart something new. some you more that I'm not crazy about the word hope. So it feels like when you said innocence, um, keeping that alive, because that innocence is the other side of limitation, of the beliefs that we're bad or wrong or sinned. We carry this original sin, and we require being fixed or saved. And I feel like you're giving a very different message here.
That's exactly right. Because I don't believe that. I don't believe anybody's coming to save you. I think it's up to you
Mm-hmm.
to create the story. And I've seen it time and time again. We've been put the example of, for example, brothers who one perhaps is very successful and the other one is not.
Mm-hmm.
And they have the same father and they have the same excuse. One says, well, it's because of my father that I'm successful. And the other one says, well, it's because of my father that I'm successful. And yet it's the same, it's the story they're telling themselves and the story that they're sharing outward.
So how has our history, our own history, do you feel like, if you could paint that picture, how has it been shaped by these biblical stories, which are so foundational in our culture, at least?
Well, these biblical stories have been ingrained into our system like a program running in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And they're ingrained into the most powerful part about our system, which is our belief system. It's different than our psychological system and all the other systems that our body is made up of. What we believe is true is in fact true. And nobody can take that from you.
Mm-hmm.
But the great thing about belief is that you can believe anything you want. You just have to find the evidence for it within yourself. Nobody's going to point things out for you. Some people may, but they're not going to do it on purpose. They're just trying to share their story.
Mm-hmm.
This world that we live in is made up of stories. There's a great quote. Just the name escapes me who said it. I'll think of it, but it says the world is made up of words. And when you know the words that the world is made out of, you can have anything you want because that's our reality. We make up our story as we're going. And all of us have slightly different story, even if we went to the same school and we had the same teacher and we had, but we all have our different parents, even in the same household, we have our own different belief systems because we have an ability to create this story based on our reality. And that expanded upon means that we have the power to create our own story and to create our own belief system and to empower those around us. We can do anything we want with it. That's how powerful we are. We just don't realize it because we're often swept away by other people's stories.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I believe these biblical stories are. They're other people's stories. That's why it's called his story, like history.
Mm-hmm.
His well, who is he?
Who's
And
he?
why,
Right.
yeah, who's he and why is he affecting me so much?
And why does he get to tell me my story?
Exactly. Exactly. He's not telling my story. That's why there's a blog that I've written. It's where I've redefined history into our story.
Mm-hmm.
Let's tell our story. You tell your story, I'll tell my story, and together we share our story.
So then how does that then impact us as parents? So it sounds like you don't have children at this point in life. Is that true?
Not quite yet. I'm working on it. It's
Okay.
maybe a few months away, actually.
Wait, should I ask?
My wife is pregnant. Yep, I'm having a baby.
Okay. So I didn't want to, pry, but yay, that's fabulous. That's fabulous. And maybe by the time this episode is actually aired, when people are listening to it, we'll say, yeah, he's a father now.
That's right. And that's one of the things when I started sharing these stories, I almost felt like a fraud because I was like, who am I
Hmm.
to write a children's book? Like I don't even have kids.
Yeah, I
But
don't think that makes you a fraud because you've been a child.
That's right. And that's the thing about the stories we tell ourselves. Like we have to fight against this sometimes because the that's why we have to become triumphant. If it was easy and it was flowing,
Mhm.
well then there wouldn't be a need for triumph. And I think that's
Hmm.
the hero's journey is we need that resistance.
Interesting, because I write a lot about and speak about the hero's journey a lot. So that's interesting. We need the triumph. We need that experience of what you're saying of overcoming something.
Well, that's what makes a great story. If it's
Mhm.
all easy peasy, it's probably not that great of a story.
I'll remember that. So then talk to me some about conscious parenting. You're about to be a parent. What do you feel like are the elements as you've been traversing this journey about story and stories? What do you feel like is important for parents to know about, to understand, to consider?
Consider this. We all have a story of where we came from, and we have a story of where we're going. And you want to be able to define that for yourself and for your children.
Okay.
Because some people say that God knows everything except for where God came from. And I think that holds true to who we are, meaning
Hmm.
we get to an age where we're very curious. If not when we're kids, for instance, my father didn't become curious about this until he was well into his 60s, and I saw him researching his name and his parents and his grand,
Hmm.
like he started digging, and for his my mom as well. And that curiosity is something that's within us. We want to know where we came from. We want to put the story together. We want it, we don't want it to stem from nothing. We want it to stem from something. And
Hmm.
we want to aim it towards something. Because if we're aimless, then we're drifting. And what happens when you're drifting? You make you're anxious, right? If you don't know where you're going in life, then you're drifting and you don't feel good. It doesn't connect. Something's missing. And that makes you feel like there's something missing. And you want to connect the dots within ourselves. We want to know. And I think that connecting these dots for yourself and for your kids really sets a foundation
Hmm.
as to what we're doing here after all. Before you get swept away by all the stories, and there are many stories to get swept away with.
Yes.
And not to deny them, they're great stories. Read them, enjoy them. And that's what I like to tell my friends is share all of the stories. I'm not gonna, with my new daughter coming aboard, I'm not going to deny her our history. I'm gonna share all the stories,
So it's
everywhere as to where I come from, and
okay.
empower her to connect her own dots.
Empower her to look behind the what we could call the illusion of the story being an absolute.
That's right.
So is that part of your message is the story is just a story?
It's just a story. Don't take it so serious. Be willing to let it go. Like your clothes go out of style, the story may go out of style. It's fine.
Okay, what I can imagine how people listening to you or listening to this show might say, what the heck is he talking about? Bible stories can't be out of date. Who are we to determine that a story that is just a story, that it's not a literal fact and a literal something to guide us?
And that's a great question. And that's a question for yourself. Who are we to do that? And
Mhm.
I would say, you're that. You are the one who decides.
Yeah.
Because there are many people who can deny their reality. They can deny it all day. But only you can choose what to pick up and run off with. That's
Yes.
how powerful you are. That's how powerful each individual is,
Mhm.
that we can choose what story is ours
Mm.
to run off with.
Hmm. So again, thinking back to children, parents, and also how we carry things forward. If I decide, if I've read, let's say this, the story of Cain and Abel, and I know it's backwards, but I'm still going to show this really fun
It looks
cover.
forwards to me. It looks forward on my end.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Well, then that's perfect. Uh, so you've got this story that you've learned, let's say, if you've gone to any kind of religious training. Um, and yet it makes you feel bad inside. Oh, I'm jealous. I'm angry at somebody close to me. Ooh, I'm a terrible person. I might, kill somebody. I might kill my sibling or my best friend or whatever. It just sets up a kind of expectation of what is, as if that is the only way we can be with it. It seems to me we could be teaching our children that it's a bigger picture, that we have choice, that we might feel angry. We might feel such intense anger that we want to do harm, but that we don't. You said this earlier, but we don't have to do that. We have choice. We can pause. We can teach our children about acknowledging that, not denying it, and then saying, yeah, and there's also this, so that I'm not burdened as a young child with that feeling of guilt and shame, which doesn't really, as a former psychotherapist, shame and that kind of shame and guilt anyway doesn't really serve
I agree. I think that shame and guilt can only take you so far.
us.
And it's really up to you to change it. And I like to say it like this, in more modern language is like this is our mind is like a time travel machine because you can see where this is going. Like this thing that you're thinking about doing, this horrible thing, maybe killing or whatever it is that you're thinking about doing, you can see where that leads. You can really see it. You can see this is not going to take you in a place where you're going to be happy at the end of it.
Excuse me.
That's you.
Well, there's also the self-judgment that comes in, and that's what I have had to work with people and had to work with it in myself. That kind of self-judgment that comes in when you believe something to be the only way that it is. That there isn't that sense of the triumph of coming through something.
And that's a tough one. That's really tough to break through. Nevertheless, we have that ability to see where things are going within ourselves. And we can change it. This is the great thing. Like if you notice time travel movies, they're all pretty much the same. They see something they want, whether it be love or money, and they go into the past and they change it. And then when they come back to the present, it's not what they thought it was. And then they go back and they try to change it again, and it's never the same. And then at the end of the movie, what they have to do is go and put things back the way they were. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't learn the lesson.
Right.
And that's what it is. You have that ability right now. You don't have to suffer so much. You can suffer in the moment as you think things through, as long as that may take, it could take days, weeks, months, as long as it takes for you to see the truth within yourself. Nobody else is going to point it out to you because nobody else can see what you can see. But if you make the time to follow through with this time for yourself, and I understand a lot of us don't have so much of that time for ourselves.
You're about to have even less.
Yeah, you're telling me. But what got me here is the ability to think that through.
Yes.
To make that time for myself, to understand like maybe I'm losing money right now, but I deserve this time for myself to really think things through and to really understand myself, where I'm coming from with this, where I'm going with this, and to change it if that's what I really want.
Yeah.
And there's no rush. That's the great thing about time. The time is the illusion that you're running out of it. And we all think we're running out of it. but you have plenty of time to think things through and make the adequate choice for yourself.
Well, it sounds like you know this from the inside out. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
Can you speak a little about that?
Well, I grew up in this household where I didn't believe what my parents were telling me. And I acted it out to preserve that relationship as a kid. It's like I knew, and I knew it because of when I acted out, I got put in my place as a kid should.
Ah,
And but perhaps the way that my parents did it, it wouldn't be the way I would do it, perhaps. Um, and it was a lot of the guilt and shame put into the parenting,
mhm.
which
Parenting by guilt and shame in a way.
sure. And I mean, I wouldn't do it that way, but only because I saw it from that perspective and I remember it not being effective because I remember becoming rebellious at some point in my teenage years, as we do. We I had this double life where I was one way at home and I was another way at school, right? And so I was pretending. And I realized at one point that I was pretending both at home and at school, that neither one of those really represented who I, at the very least, wanted to be.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to define myself for myself.
Wow. I'm struck with how potent that is. And I'm remembering how certainly as a teenager, I didn't feel connected with what I was being told at home. I didn't believe a lot of things. I didn't believe the situation that I was presented with. And yet I went along, keep the peace, make things okay. But I also didn't feel like I did that, I didn't represent myself well outside either, as to who I was, as to who I really felt inside. And it does take really the willingness to claim that journey to see, well, who am I? Who am I really? And for you, that you kept alive that awareness is so essential in it. And I feel like you've taken it full circle now in crafting these new stories.
Thank you for seeing that.
Yeah. Do you feel, is there more to the story? Meaning, and I don't mean the story in the way we've been using that word. Is there more besides the writing of these books that you're feeling moved to do to bring about a different future for humanity?
There most definitely is a sense of, I would say, a calling.
Hmm.
I feel like humanity is perhaps demanding something of me.
Hmm.
And and not only do I feel like humanity wants something from me, but I want to do something for humanity.
Hmm.
And I don't want to do it from a place of debt. I don't feel in debt to humanity.
Hmm.
Uh, I feel like a lot of these stories have set us up to believe that we're in debt. You know,
Ooh.
for instance, the Adam and Eve stories, we weren't enough. We made this mistake. We went behind Adam's back. It's this sense of debt that I don't believe applies to us. And so if we're from the US, we believe somehow we're in debt to China. I don't owe China a penny. I don't even know many Chinese people. I definitely don't owe them anything. I feel like we're setting ourselves up. When we're starting from a place of debt, it's really hard to crawl out of that. And
Mm.
so I don't feel I owe anybody anything. I want to give the best of myself
Mhm.
simply because it's the best of myself. I want you to see the best of me.
Uh-huh.
I don't want you to see the worst of me. And we all have this dark side, this part about ourselves we don't want others to see. But we could only hide that from ourselves for so long before it's about time to shine a light on ourselves.
Mhm.
And that's why I share these stories. I believe these stories of Adam and Eve and God and Lucifer, I think they're meant to show us the best and the worst part about ourselves. And it's up to us to nurture that within ourselves
Mhm.
and give the best, because that's where the choice comes in. We can see, like we were talking about earlier, we can see where the dark side goes, and we can also see where the light goes, and we can make a choice. And I want to give the best of myself in the light, so that when I look at myself in the mirror, I am proud of what I'm looking at. And at the very least, even though we may have doubt, at the very least, there's this little stem that says, you did your best, at least for today. Tomorrow you can do better.
Mm. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm thinking about that Adam and Eve story. And I know that in the research that I've done and in the way that I've looked at that story in particular, that I see it all very differently. And I don't even see a best and worst. I see that I'll put it this way, and it's pretty right out there. The patriarch was designed to say, oh, Eve was bad and everything coming of woman is of sin, because there was a questioning, there was a desire for something more. And that perhaps there's a really different way to, and I don't know what you've written about this, a whole different take on that story that isn't about best and worst. It's more about, it's about that drive for consciousness, that drive to want to know more about who we are and not to stay in the shadows with that.
That's exactly right. And I will share this about that story of how I changed it, because that's what I'm doing to these stories, is I'm reflecting it upon itself. And
Mm,
so, I set it up to where, when both God and Lucifer introduced the idea of the fruit of, uh, I'm sorry, the name, what's
the tree of knowledge, or
the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right?
okay.
And it was more like a curiosity.
Mhm.
Hey, remember that fruit that God told us about? I want to eat some. She's having this conversation with her partner.
Mhm.
Oh, and Adam says, well, it seems kind of dangerous, doesn't it, Eve? Like, we could lose ourselves, right? We can lose ourselves.
Mm,
And Eve says, well, not if we do it together. We can hold hands and never let go.
mm,
And so it's like, it's this earning, this yearning for adventure, to
mhm.
go into the
To go into
unknown.
the unknown, and that's why we're here.
That's right. And then so what they did is they held hands and they did it together.
Mm,
And they went into the unknown. And there was and then when they came to be, because they lost consciousness, right? As we do when we fall asleep, we lose consciousness. And when it comes to be, when we regain our consciousness in the morning, in the light,
mhm.
hey, what's different? Well, nothing looks different, but I feel different.
Yeah.
There's more to this. Look around. There's nothing else like us. I want more of this. I want more of us, because this is before they had kids. This is before they realized they can multiply.
Yeah.
And there was this. They had to understand the pain of birth, and
Mm,
they went at it together.
mhm.
Right? It wasn't separate. They weren't shunned away from paradise. They had to do something. They had to jump. They had to take that leap of faith to go into the unknown, into the darkness, to come out the other side and realize their potential, their great potential of great stories to come. And that's what I believe these stories are.
Yes.
I believe this great potential is within us, but we have to break through that comfort, and we have to go into the unknown and perhaps face our fears, and to face the people whom discriminate, or the people whom shun us, or the people whom, and then perhaps, like my parents, where I thought I was going to be shunned and it wasn't that way.
Yeah.
Perhaps I came out the other side and I realized that I can create this relationship with these people whom I've grown up with. And now we have this new light within our being. And it's not just for myself, I did it for them. And I wouldn't have done it if I wouldn't have crossed that threshold of fear.
Exactly. And that is the hero's journey, which we were talking about earlier. That is the hero's journey, the essence of going into the unknown, the dark of the forest, the path that has not been trodden upon. So I'm going to ask you this question again. I asked it before, and you didn't answer in the way that I wanted. And I don't mean and that is about, besides the books, what else are you planning to do with this? Or is there, I loved in your bio, you called yourself a practical philosophy teacher. Clearly, yes, I see that, I understand. Is there a way that you're going to take this out in some other platforms besides the books?
I hate to break this to you, Laurie, but this is it. This conversation with you is it.
Okay.
I want to have more conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to share. I want you to ask me questions. I want to be able to ask you questions. I want to build relationships. I want to build foundational bases of where we're coming from and where we're going. And I haven't even cut the surface of where we're going.
No.
We have to have many more conversations, Laurie,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope that we do, because I have somewhere to take this, and it's not going to happen in a 1 hour conversation.
So you didn't disappoint me at all. No, that's it. That's it. That's what I'm feeling, is that you might not have another platform in this moment, but what I hear in your words is that you are creating a movement. You might not have thought about that, or maybe you have, and you say, "Oh, she got me." But I feel like
I've been exposed.
that want to have more conversations. It's not about you putting yourself out in a certain way, but it's to bring from the inside out and from the bottom up a different way of how we view ourselves. And in this regard, how children are able to come into the world and see themselves in a different way.
Absolutely. And the truth is, I'm really excited about it, because every person that I do talk to about it asks me different questions, and they shed lights and expose things about me. I just joked about it, like, you exposed me. But the truth is, I want to be exposed.
Yes.
That's what's so great about it.
Yes.
I want to expose myself, that because I could only take these conversations within myself so far. And I need people. And the truth is, not all the conversations are as enlightening. Not everybody. I can only remember one conversation where they were kind of pushing and prying, like kind of conflicting. But the truth is, at this point, I know who I am and where I'm coming from and where I'm going so deeply that by the end of that conversation, they were enthralled. They were in it. I had brought them into my world, and I have that power. That's how powerful we are. We can bring people into our world. And I don't mean to. I really want you to expose me. I want you to do your best to bring me into your world. And that's what I want to teach my daughter. I want to teach it to my wife. I want to teach this to my parents, to myself, like this ability that we have within ourselves to break out of this barrier, of this fear that we have, and create this wholesome unity where we probably don't have to agree on every single point.
Not at all.
On parenting or anything else for that matter. But we can most definitely have a conversation, and you can pry and you can poke and you can ask. And when you have this sense of pry and poke away, I want you to. I want to expose that. If you have something to poke at, if you want to expose me, do it. I want you to. I want you to do your best, because that's what I expect from you. I expect your best because I'm attempting to give you my best.
And that may, in that coming together, there could be something entirely new that gets created, which is so wonderful.
There most definitely will.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jay, can you tell us where people can get the books and where people can find out more just in general about what you're up to?
Yeah, Amazon, Conscious Bible Stories.
Okay.
I'm on X these days, as they call it, Twitter, Instagram, J Aedo.
Okay. And do you have a website that people can find you at?
ConsciousBibleStories.com.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. And all that will be in the show notes, but I also like to give it voice here.
I appreciate that.
Any last words or last whatevers that you feel moved to want to share?
I think I've pretty much said what I wanted to say, and you asked really great questions. I feel very grateful. I will share a little bit about where I'm taking this, at least
Mhm.
in the near future, where I share the stories of God and Lucifer. I don't believe that they're enemies. I don't believe that they are designed, these stories, I don't believe that they're designed to create friction within ourselves. I believe that they're best friends.
Mhm.
I believe that Lucifer, whom we are afraid of, is the darkness. And he's like any great father, is exposing ourselves to ourselves. He is designed for us to break through that pattern of behavior that we find within ourselves, and is not meant to break us down. It is not meant to put us into the ground. He's not designed to shut us up.
Mhm. In
He
fear.
wants us to
In
break through.
fear.
And the devil is nothing to be afraid of. It is a part of us. It is designed to break through. And after all, what is the light without the darkness? It's really nothing. It's just being. And so God without the devil, I believe, is nothing. And I think that God is what God is because he has the devil to reflect upon itself.
So we know God by the contrast.
That's right.
Yeah. Whew, thank you, Jay. This has really been quite a fun conversation, quite an enlightening one. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been fun for me too. Thank you, Laurie.
Great. And thank you to our audience, to you out there. I don't even feel like you're out there. I feel like you're with us. But thank you for joining us today at Wisdom Talk Radio. Join us here regularly for more wisdom, discovery, and illumination. Remember, you can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're also on YouTube, so you can get to see us there and enjoy that. And if you've enjoyed listening today, please do leave us a review. That helps more people to discover this and more people to discover the kind of, I believe, transformation that's possible. And that's what we're about. So, if you want to know more about how to thrive with your own quantum connection, take the quantum connection quiz now, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio. We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.